Hey guys, so today I wanted to bring you another analytical video where this time I look at the difference in win percentage based on whether you won the die roll or not by using publicly available Dueling Book replays. So what I did was I looked at the top 25 players on the ranked leaderboards on Dueling Book, searched their last publicly available 20 replays through ygeoscope.com, and then started collecting information like what deck they were playing, whether they won the die roll, and what the outcome of the match was. Now, this analysis is certainly far from perfect and being robust, but it was more of a fun little exercise to see if we can see any obvious trends. Now, if you find this video interesting, consider giving it a like and subscribing to make my day. Alright, so let's first do a brief overview of what decks were played by the top 25 players included in the analysis. Now, keep in mind that I chose the top 25 players as of September 1st, so it may be different than what you see now at the time that you're watching this video. Also, there's a few reasons why the total number of matches included in this analysis is 463 rather than 500, since I was using 20 available replays for each player. So firstly, if a match was concluded before any card was played, which could have been due to disconnection or maybe rage quitting, I wouldn't know, then it was not included. And also in the 20 available replays, in rare instances, some of them were for single games and not matches, so I didn't include those to be consistent. And lastly, some of the players in my top 25 pool of players played against each other in some of the matches, and since I didn't want to have any duplicate records, I just kept one of those matches. So overall, 463 is of course an extremely small sample size, but I unfortunately don't have the manpower to be able to go through thousands of replays and or logs to know who won the die roll, as well as collecting some other information. So with that aside, it looks like the most commonly played deck was Emancipator, which took up about a third of all matches included in this analysis. And then we have Rockets and Eldritch variants at 19% each, and the Eldritch variants included Synchro, Pure, and Dogmatica builds. And finally, we have Infernoble Knights at about 13% and Dinosaurs at about 9%. And in the other category, we actually had Danger, Buster Blader, Synchro, Subterra Guru, and Megaliths. Now let's move on to the overall results. So it looks like the 25 players in our pool won just about 3/4 of their matches, which is pretty impressive. And in terms of die rolls, the players in our pool won about 48% of the die rolls, or 220 out of 463 matches. Alright, so if we look at deck specific win percentage among the players in our pool, you see that Emancipator and Eldritch variants both had around a win percentage of 76, with Rockets at 67% and Infernoble Knights at 66%. And then you have Dinosaurs with a really impressive 86% in this small sample. Okay, so let's get to the results that we've been waiting for. So when the players in our top 25 pool won the die roll, they won 81% of their matches. Alternatively, you can look at this as the odds of winning when you won the die roll was 4.1 to 1. Conversely, when the players in our pool lost the die roll, they won 67% of their matches, or in other words, their odds of winning when they lost the die roll was 2 to 1. Honestly, 67% is still pretty good for losing the die roll, but certainly lower than when you won the die roll. Also, when our players won the die roll, they chose to go first 219 out of 220 times, or 99.6%. And on the flip side, when the players in our pool lost the die roll, their opponent actually chose to go second 30 out of 243 times, or about 12%, allowing our players in our top 25 pool to still be able to go first. Now, I did take a look at treating these scenarios as the same as winning the die roll for the players in our pool because they got to go first anyways, but it didn't really change the overall numbers, so I just kept this scenario as losing the die roll for this analysis. And if we were to look at the win percentage based on die roll for each deck, here is the breakdown. Now, the sample size for each deck is of course really small, so definitely take these results with a huge grain of salt. Now, for the most part, you see the trend of doing better when you win the die roll versus not, except for Infernoble Knights, which actually had a slightly higher win percentage in cases where our players lost the die roll, winning 63% of the time when they won the die roll and 69% of the time when they lost the die roll. Now, this was bizarre to me because you would think, especially Infernoble Knights, would do much better when you win the die roll, since they are ripping cards out of your opponent's hands when they go first. And this is where our extremely small sample size is probably affecting these numbers. Lastly, Dinosaurs were pretty interesting because whether they won the die roll or not, it had a really solid win percentage, winning 88% of the time when they won the die roll and 84% of the time when they lost the die roll. If this trend is actually true for dinosaurs, then I don't think it's too surprising, since dinos, they can set up a pretty good going first board, but also very good at going second and OTKing. Okay, well that's it for the results. Hope you found this video somewhat interesting. Now, before you go, I do want to provide some key considerations. I know I said this repeatedly in this video, but again, the sample size in this analysis was really small, so don't fixate too hard on the exact values you saw in this video. I was more so trying to look for general trends, and if we had thousands and thousands of data available, I'm confident that we would still see somewhat of a notable gap in win percentage based on winning the die roll. And I'm sure most of you will agree based on your own personal experience. Another thing to consider is that this analysis was based on the top players on ranked leaderboards for Dueling Book. So these are really competent and skilled players, right? So it may be the case that the gap between winning and losing the die roll in terms of win percentage could actually be bigger for the average player, since theoretically more skilled players may be able to play things out better even when they're forced to go second while playing a going first deck. At the same time, even amongst such good players, there still does seem like there is a trend in winning more if you win the die roll. So that's something to consider. Anyways guys, that's it for today's video. Let me know if you thought this was interesting and whether you have any other analysis that I could pursue based on any Yu-Gi-Oh data that's publicly available. I would totally be interested in doing more of these kind of videos. Again, if you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Anyways guys, take care.